Hey, beautiful souls. Ready for a journey from heartbreak to hope? Tonight, we're diving deep into a story that'll tear your heart wide open before putting it back together stronger than ever. This is for everyone who's ever felt rejected, cast aside, or told they weren't enough. For those who've had to rebuild themselves from the ground up and discover that sometimes the love we deserve finds us only after we've learned to love ourselves. So settle in, dim the lights, and let Luna Ashwood show you that even the deepest wounds can heal, and that second chances at love burn brighter than the full moon itself. Chapter 1. The words hit me like silver bullets to the chest. I, Marcus Blackthorne, Alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, reject you, Luna Ashwood, as my mate and future Luna. The ancient oak grove fell silent around us, even the crickets holding their breath as my world imploded. The mate bond that had sung in my veins for 3 years, that golden thread connecting my soul to his, snapped with such violent force that I doubled over, retching onto the forest floor. Marcus, please. My voice cracked like thin ice. What did I do wrong? He stood there in the moonlight, 6 feet of devastating beauty and cold authority, his dark hair catching silver highlights from above. Those storm-gray eyes that used to look at me like I hung the moon now regarded me with the warmth of winter granite. You're not strong enough, Luna. Each word was a deliberate cut. The pack needs an alpha female who can bear strong airs, who can fight beside me, not hide behind me. Today's rogue attack proved you're a liability. My hand instinctively went to my ribs, where claw marks from the afternoon's battle still throbbed beneath hastily healed skin. I'd thrown myself between a rogue wolf and Marcus's younger sister, taking hits meant for her. I'd thought it was heroic. Apparently, I'd thought wrong. I saved Emma's life today. By nearly getting yourself killed. His voice boomed through the trees, causing night birds to take flight. A true Luna would have strategized, would have called for backup, would have. Would have what? Let your sister die while I ran for help. Would have been strong enough to handle the situation without becoming a casualty herself. The cruel logic of his words wrapped around my throat like a noose. In our world, strength was everything. Physical prowess, fighting ability, the capacity to protect the pack, these weren't just preferred traits in a Luna. They were requirements. And I was an Omega who'd gotten lucky with a mate bond. A healer, not a warrior. Someone who saved lives by mending them, not by ending threats. The elders have already agreed, Marcus continued, his voice gentling into something that might have been regret if I didn't know better. Scarlett Morrison will make a better Luna. She's fought beside me since we were teens. She understands what this pack needs. Scarlett. Beautiful, fierce, deadly Scarlett with her auburn hair and warrior's body. Scarlett, who'd made it clear from day one that she thought Marcus was settling for damaged goods when he'd claimed me as his mate. Scarlett, who was probably listening from the shadows right now, savoring her victory. So that's it. I whispered, my wolf whimpering inside, my chest like a wounded animal. 3 years together, and you're just done? The ceremony is tomorrow night. You have until then to leave Crescent Moon territory. Banished. The word he didn't say hung between us like a death sentence. I stared at him. This man I'd loved with every fiber of my being, who'd whispered promises under starlight and held me through nightmares, and saw a stranger wearing his face. I hope she's worth it, I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. I hope Scarlett gives you everything you think you need. Luna. No. I held up a hand, and to my surprise, he actually stopped. You've said enough. You've made your choice. I turned to go, then paused, looking back over my shoulder. But you know what, Marcus? Someday you're going to realize that strength isn't just about how hard you can hit or how fast you can kill. And when that day comes, I hope you remember what you threw away. I walked into the forest without looking back, each step taking me further from the only home I'd ever known. Behind me, I heard his sharp intake of breath, caught the scent of regret, and maybe, just maybe, fear. But I didn't turn around. The pack house came into view 20 minutes later, its warm yellow windows mocking me with promises of belonging I'd never feel again. I'd grown up here, been raised by the pack after my parents died in a rogue attack when I was 7. This place, these people, they were my family.
Were.
Past tense. I slipped through the back door and up to my room, muscle memory guiding me through darkness. Everything looked exactly the same. My collection of healing crystals on the windowsill, medical textbooks stacked on my desk, photos of pack gatherings lining my dresser. A life interrupted mid-sentence. I grabbed my hiking backpack and started throwing in essentials. Clothes, my grandmother's moonstone pendant, the emergency stash of cash I kept hidden in a shoebox. My hands shook as I worked, adrenaline and shock making everything feel surreal. A soft knock at my door made me freeze. Luna? It's Emma. Marcus's sister slipped inside before I could answer, her blue eyes wide with concern. At 19, she still had that gangly teenage energy, all long limbs and fierce loyalty. I heard, she whispered, closing the door behind her. Luna, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. Don't. I cupped her face in my hands. Don't you dare blame yourself for your brother's choices. But if I'd been stronger today, if I'd fought better, then you might be dead right now, and I'd have failed as your healer and your friend. I pressed my forehead against hers. You did nothing wrong, Em. Nothing. She wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug that smelled like vanilla and pack comfort. Where will you go? I don't know yet. The truth tasted like ashes. Somewhere far from here. Will you ever come back? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us wanted to face. Banished wolves rarely returned. Most died alone in the wilderness, unable to survive without pack bonds to sustain them. Maybe someday, I lied, because the alternative would have broken us both. Emma pulled back, fishing something from her pocket.
Here.
Take this. It was a small silver compass, engraved with Celtic knotwork. It was our grandmother's. She said it would always point you toward home. Emma, I can't.
Please.
I need to know you'll find your way back to us someday. I took the compass with trembling fingers, its weight both comforting and devastating. I'll treasure it. We held each other for another long moment, and then she was gone, disappearing back into the hallway like a ghost. I was alone again with my half-packed bag and shattered dreams. By dawn, I was on the highway heading north, my beat-up Honda Civic loaded with everything I owned in the world. In the rearview mirror, I watched the forest that had sheltered me my whole life fade into memory. The mate bond in my chest felt like an infected wound, throbbing with phantom pain from a connection that no longer existed. My wolf had retreated so deep inside me that I could barely sense her presence. We were both broken, both grieving, both terrified of what came next. But as the miles stretched between me and Crescent Moon territory, something else began to stir beneath the pain. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe I wasn't strong enough to be his Luna. But that didn't mean I couldn't become strong enough to be something else entirely. The compass Emma had given me sat on my dashboard, its needle spinning wildly, as if it couldn't decide which direction was home anymore. Neither can I thought, pressing harder on the gas pedal. But maybe that's the point. Chapter 2. 3 days of driving brought me to the edge of nowhere, a small mountain town called Cedar Falls, nestled in the shadow of the Cascade Range. My gas tank was nearly empty, my cash dwindling, and my wolf was so deeply buried I wondered if she'd ever surface again. The Welcome to Cedar Falls sign was riddled with bullet holes and faded by weather, but something about this place called to me. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the way the forest seemed to whisper secrets just beyond hearing. Or maybe it was the massive black wolf I glimpsed watching me from the treeline as I pulled into town. I blinked, and it was gone. The main street looked like something from a postcard or a horror movie, depending on your perspective. Quaint storefronts with hand-painted signs, a diner with checkered curtains, an old-fashioned barbershop with a spinning pole. But underneath the small-town charm lurked something wilder. Scratch marks on telephone poles too high for any normal animal. the metallic scent of recent violence lingering in the mountain air. This was pack territory. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my damaged wolf stirred uneasily. Just passing through, I promised the unseen watchers. I'm not here to cause trouble. The Moonlight Diner sat at the town's heart, its neon sign flickering against the gathering dusk. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten anything substantial since leaving Crescent Moon territory. With $15 in my wallet and nowhere else to go, I pushed through the glass door. A bell chimed overhead, and every conversation in the place died. 6 sets of eyes turned to study me. Locals with flannel shirts and suspicious expressions, their nostrils flaring as they caught my scent.
Packless.
Rejected. Alone. In the supernatural world, I might as well have been wearing a neon sign that said, "Easy target." "You can sit anywhere, Han," called a voice from behind the counter. The waitress looked to be in her 50s, with silver-streaked brown hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. But there was steel underneath the sweetness, and when she moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator. Another wolf. But this one felt different.
Calmer. More centered.
I chose a booth in the corner, where I could keep my back to the wall and watch the room. Old habits from my healing work. Always know your exits. Always be ready to run to someone who needed help. Or, in this case, to run from people who might want to hurt me. The waitress approached with a coffee pot and a smile that seemed genuine. "I'm Rosie. You look like you could use some comfort food and a friendly ear." "Just coffee and whatever pie you've got," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not staying long." She poured steaming coffee into a heavy ceramic mug. "That's what they all say. Cedar Falls has a way of keeping folks who need keeping, though." Before I could ask what that meant, the diner's door chimed again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees as a man walked in, and I understood immediately why. He was enormous, easily 6.5 feet of solid muscle, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, and a jaw that could cut glass. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. They were the color of old amber, flecked with gold, and when they landed on me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. My wolf stirred. Not just stirred. She sat up and took notice, pressing against my consciousness with interest that bordered on excitement. What the hell? The big man's nostrils flared slightly, and his eyes widened a fraction. He'd scented me too, caught the complex mixture of pack loss and healing magic, and something else I couldn't name. "Trouble, Dex?" Rosie asked, her voice carrying a note of warning. "No trouble." His voice was a rumble of thunder, deep enough to make my bones vibrate. "Just unexpected company." He chose a booth across the room, but I could feel his attention like a physical weight. Every time I looked up from my coffee, those amber eyes were watching me with an intensity that should have been unsettling. Instead, it made my skin tingle with awareness. "Focus, Luna. You're running for your life, not looking for another heartbreak." "So," Rosie said, sliding into the seat across from me with practiced ease. "What brings you to our little corner of the world?" "Just passing through," I repeated. "In a car that's held together by prayer and duct tape, with everything you own in the back seat?" She raised an eyebrow. "Honey, I've been serving coffee to lost souls for 30 years. I know a runner when I see one." Heat rose in my cheeks. "I'm not. Running from an abusive ex? Bad business deal? Family drama?" She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Or pack trouble?" The last words were spoken so quietly that only supernatural hearing could have caught them. I went rigid, my hand tightening around the coffee mug. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do." Rosie's expression softened. "Cedar Falls is what you might call a sanctuary town, Luna. We get a lot of folks who need a fresh start, no questions asked. Packless wolves, especially." My throat constricted. "How did you know your name? Your scent carries pack history, just like everyone else's. And yours is complicated." She glanced toward the man called Dex, who was studiously ignoring us while demolishing a plate of meatloaf. "Dex picked up your trail about 50 miles south. He's been tracking you since yesterday." Ice water flooded my veins. "Tracking me?" Easy, Han, he's not hunting you. He's the alpha of the Cedar Falls pack. What's left of it anyway. It's his job to know when new wolves enter his territory.
Alpha.
Of course he was. That explained the overwhelming presence, the way everyone in the diner deferred to him without seeming to realize they were doing it. I'm just passing through, I said for the third time, hating how weak I sounded. Are you? Rosie tilted her head. Because your car's got a blown head gasket, your inspection's 3 months overdue, and you've got maybe $20 to your name. Doesn't sound like passing through to me. Sounds like you've run as far as you can go. The accuracy of her assessment hit like a slap. She was right. I was stranded, broke, and completely out of options. I'd been running on adrenaline and desperation for 3 days, but reality was catching up fast. I can work, I said desperately. I'm a trained healer. I can… Luna. The deep voice made me jump. Dex had approached our table without a sound, moving with the liquid grace of an apex predator. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Broad shoulders blocking out the overhead light, amber eyes that seemed to see straight through my defenses. My wolf whined softly, confused by her own reaction. She should be cowering from a strange alpha, especially in our weakened state. Instead, she was practically purring. You're hurt, he said simply. It wasn't a question. His gaze swept over me with clinical precision, cataloging injuries I'd thought I was hiding. The still-healing claw marks on my ribs. The exhaustion that went bone deep. The spiritual wounds that no amount of medical training could fix. I'm fine. You're lying. He slid into the booth beside Rosie, his massive frame making the space feel suddenly intimate. When's the last time you shifted? The question hit like a physical blow. Shifting required a strong connection with your wolf, something I'd lost when the mate bond shattered. I'd been stuck in human form for 4 days now, and the separation was killing me slowly. That's none of your business, I whispered. It is when you collapse in my territory. His voice gentled slightly. Luna, you're in cascade failure. If you don't shift soon, you'll lose your wolf entirely. Maybe that would be easier. The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and broken and far too honest. Both Rosie and Dex went very still. Who rejected you? Dex asked, his voice deadly quiet. I jerked back, as if he'd struck me. How did you? The scent signature doesn't lie. Someone severed your mate bond recently, and badly. His hands clenched into fists on the table. Who? It doesn't matter. It does to me. The intensity in his voice made my pulse skip. Why would a stranger care about my problems? Why would an alpha I'd just met look at me like my pain personally offended him? Look, I said, standing on shaking legs. I appreciate the concern, but I should go. I don't want to cause trouble for your pack. Sit down. It wasn't quite an alpha command, but authority rang in his voice nonetheless. My knees gave out before I could stop them, depositing me back in the booth with embarrassing speed. Dex's expression immediately shifted to regret. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to use my influence. It's just, he ran a hand through his dark hair. You're going to die if you keep running, Luna. And I can't let that happen. Why? The word came out as a broken whisper. Why would you care what happens to some packless Omega? Because, said a new voice from the diner's entrance, you're not just any packless Omega, are you? I turned to see a woman in her 30s with long auburn hair and violet eyes that seemed to look straight through me. She moved with a predator's grace, but there was something otherworldly about her, something that made my healing instincts scream warnings. Sage, Dex warned. Not now. Oh, I think now is perfect. The woman, Sage, smiled, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp. Especially since our new friend here is carrying some very interesting bloodline markers. My blood turned to ice. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? Sage's eyes began to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with wolf nature. Tell me, Luna Ashwood, what do you know about your grandmother's family? The name hit like a physical blow. Nobody knew about my grandmother except… How do you know that name? Because, Sage said, settling into the booth like she belonged there. Your grandmother was Moira Ashwood, last of the lunar blessed bloodline. And if I'm not mistaken, that makes you something very special indeed. The diner fell silent around us, and I could feel the weight of every supernatural gaze in the room. Whatever Sage was talking about, it was clearly significant, and I had absolutely no idea what any of it meant. I think, Dex said quietly, we need to talk. Chapter 3. An hour later, I found myself in Dex's living room, clutching a mug of tea that smelled like moonflowers and trying not to hyperventilate. His house was a rustic cabin on the outskirts of town, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces, with bookshelves that climbed to the ceiling and contained everything from ancient folklore to modern physics. It should have felt cozy. Instead, it felt like a trap closing around me. You're safe here, Dex said from the kitchen, as if he could read my thoughts. The house is warded. No one can find you unless I allow it. Warded by what? I called back, studying the strange symbols carved into the doorframe. By me. Sage emerged from what looked like a library, carrying an armload of old books. I'm what you might call the town witch. Witches are real. She gave me a look that suggested I was being deliberately obtuse. Honey, you're a werewolf. Your ex-mate just rejected you in a grove of sacred oaks under the full moon, severing a mystical bond that connected your souls. At what point did you decide to draw the line at witches? Fair point. Dex returned with a plate of sandwiches and settled into the chair across from me. This close, I could see details I'd missed in the diner. The thin scar running along his left temple, the calluses on his hands that spoke of physical work, the way he moved like he was constantly aware of every exit and potential threat. Before we go any further, he said, I need to know if you're here by choice or if someone sent you. Sent me? I blinked. Who would send me? Luna. Sage settled beside him, opening one of her books. The lunar blessed bloodline has been thought extinct for over a century. If word got out that one of their descendants was alive and unmated. She trailed off meaningfully. What's so special about being lunar blessed? I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. The look that passed between Dex and Sage was loaded with implications. The lunar blessed were the original pack healers, Sage explained. But not just physical healing. They could mend spiritual wounds, strengthen mate bonds, even restore severed pack connections. During the War of Shadows 200 years ago, they were hunted to near extinction because their power could tip the balance between rival factions. War of Shadows. A conflict between werewolf packs that nearly destroyed our entire species, Dex said quietly. The survivors agreed to hide our existence from humans and live in smaller, scattered territories. The lunar blessed were casualties of that war. Their bloodline was considered too dangerous to survive. I stared at them both, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath me. But I'm not. I mean, I can barely heal a paper cut right now. My wolf won't even surface. That's because your abilities are tied to your emotional state, Sage said gently. Trauma, especially mate bond rejection, can sever the connection to your power temporarily. But the potential is still there. She opened her book to a page filled with intricate drawings, wolves surrounded by shimmering light, hands that glowed with healing energy, complex ritual circles marked with phases of the moon. This is a genealogical record of the lunar blessed families, she continued. Look. I leaned forward reluctantly, and my breath caught. There, in faded ink, was a family tree that included names I recognized from my grandmother's old stories. Moira Ashwood, Elena Night Whisper, and, at the bottom, in newer handwriting, Luna Ashwood, born under the hunter's moon. Last known descendant. How is this possible? I whispered. My grandmother she was a pack healer, nothing more. Was she? Dex asked softly. Think, Luna. What did she teach you about healing? What did she tell you about your heritage? Images flashed through my memory, my grandmother's hands glowing softly as she treated injured packmates, the way animals seemed drawn to her, the stories she'd tell about wolves who could speak to the moon itself. I'd thought they were fairy tales. She died when I was 12, I said numbly. Pack raids. The same attack that killed my parents. Maybe. Sage's expression was grim. Or maybe someone figured out what she was and eliminated the threat. The implication hit like a sledgehammer. My entire family murdered because of what we were, what I was. This is insane. I stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly under starlight, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. I'm nobody special. I'm just a failed healer who got rejected by her mate. I can't be part of some ancient bloodline. Luna. Dex's voice was closer than expected. He'd followed me to the window, his presence warm and solid behind me. I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand, if other people figure out what you are, they'll come for you. What do you mean? A lunar-blessed power doesn't just heal, Sage said from across the room. It can create unbreakable pact bonds, strengthen bloodlines, even make connections where none existed before. In the wrong hands, that kind of ability could be weaponized. I turned to face them both, my heart hammering. You're talking about using me as some kind of, what? Magical breeding stock. That's one possibility. Dex's jaw tightened. There are alpha families who've been trying to consolidate power for generations. If they could force a mate bond with you, use your abilities to strengthen their pack connections, they could create an unstoppable supernatural dynasty, Sage finished. The room spun around me. This morning I'd been a broken, rejected Omega with nothing left to lose. Now I was apparently the last member of an extinct magical bloodline, and people would kill to possess me. I can't. The words came out as a broken whisper. I can't handle this. Any of this. My knees gave out, but before I could hit the floor, strong arms caught me. Dex lifted me easily, carrying me to the couch like I weighed nothing. His scent surrounded me, pine and storm winds, and something indefinably masculine that made my damaged wolf stir with interest. Easy, he murmured, settling me against the cushions. Breathe, Luna. Just breathe. I don't know how to be what you're saying I am, I whispered against his shoulder. I don't know how to be anything anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. The quiet certainty in his voice made me look up. His amber eyes were soft with understanding, and for the first time since Marcus's rejection, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Why would you help me? I asked. You don't even know me. Because... He hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. Because the moment you walked into that diner, something in me recognized something in you. Call it instinct, call it fate, call it whatever you want. But I'm not letting you face this alone. Sage cleared her throat delicately. As touching as this moment is, we have practical concerns. Luna's scent signature is going to draw attention soon, especially if she doesn't shift and re-establish her connection to her wolf. We need to start her training immediately. Training. To access your abilities. To defend yourself. To understand what you're capable of. Sage's expression was serious. Because like it or not, Luna Ashwood, you're not just running from a broken heart anymore. You're running from people who will kill to possess what you represent. And if I can't learn, if I can't become this powerful healer you think I am... Dex's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt shockingly intimate. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I think you're stronger than you realize. How can you be so sure? Because, he said, his thumb tracing circles across my knuckles, you survived 3 days alone in the wilderness after a mate bond rejection. You drove hundreds of miles with no destination and no resources. You walked into a strange diner in unknown territory and held your own against an alpha's questions. That's not the behavior of someone weak, Luna. That's the behavior of someone fighting to survive. His words hit something deep inside me, some tiny spark of self-worth I'd thought Marcus had extinguished completely. Maybe Dex was right. Maybe I was stronger than I believed. Okay, I said quietly. What do I need to do? First, we get your wolf back, Sage said, closing her books with a decisive snap. Then we start uncovering exactly what kind of power you're carrying around. And then we figure out how to keep you alive long enough to use it. Outside the window, clouds drifted across the moon, casting shifting shadows across the forest floor. Somewhere in those trees, I could sense watching eyes, pack members keeping guard, or something more sinister. Either way, my running days were over. It was time to learn how to fight back. Chapter 4. The first attempt to shift nearly killed me. We'd moved to a clearing behind Dex's house, where moonlight filtered through ancient pines and the air hummed with old magic. Sage had drawn symbols in the dirt around me. Protection wards, she said, to contain any magical overflow from my transformation. Remember, she coached from the circle's edge, don't force it. Your wolf is hurt, not gone. Call to her gently. I closed my eyes and reached inward, searching for the familiar presence that had been my companion since childhood. For a moment, I found nothing, just empty darkness where my wolf should be. Then, buried deep beneath layers of trauma and rejection, I felt her. She was curled in a tight ball of pain, whimpering like a wounded animal. Come on, girl, I whispered mentally. We need each other. She stirred slightly, lifting her head to look at me with eyes that reflected my own heartbreak. It hurts, she whined. The bond, it hurts so much. I know, but we're somewhere safe now. We have help. Slowly, cautiously, she began to uncurl. The shift started as it always did, a tingling in my fingertips, a loosening in my bones. But then something went wrong. Power surged through me like lightning, raw and uncontrolled. My hands began to glow with silver light, and the symbols Sage had drawn flared to life around me. The air itself seemed to ripple, and I heard her curse sharply. Luna, stop. You're pulling too much. But I couldn't stop. The power had a will of its own, pouring through me in waves that made my skin feel like it was on fire. My wolf howled in distress, and I felt myself losing control completely. Then strong hands gripped my shoulders, and suddenly the world steadied. Look at me. Dex's voice cut through the chaos, anchor steady and calm. Luna, look at me. I opened eyes I didn't remember closing and found myself staring into amber depths that seemed to glow with their own light. The wild magic still coursed through me, but his presence gave me something to focus on, something to ground myself with. That's it, he murmured. Use my strength. Let me help carry the load. The connection between us flared to life, not a mate bond, but something else. Something that felt like recognition, like coming home. My power responded to his presence, settling into manageable channels instead of the destructive flood it had been moments before. My shift completed in a rush of sensation that left me gasping. When I looked down, I saw silver-gray paws instead of hands, felt the familiar weight of my wolf form settling around me like a comfortable jacket. But something was different. My fur shimmered with traces of that same silver light, and when I moved, I could see faint luminous paw prints in the dirt. Well, Sage said, sounding slightly stunned. That was educational. I looked up at Dex, who was still kneeling beside me, his hands resting on my wolf's shoulders. The concern in his eyes was so genuine it made my chest tight with emotion. Thank you, I tried to project. His slight smile suggested he'd understood. Anytime. I shifted back to human form, easier now that the connection was reestablished, and found myself sitting on the ground in Dex's oversized flannel shirt. When had he given me that? The light, I said, staring at my still faintly glowing hands. What was that? Lunar blessed magic, Sage said, making notes in a leather journal. But far more powerful than the historical accounts suggested. Luna, I think you're not just a descendant of the bloodline. I think you might be the strongest lunar blessed in centuries. Is that good or bad? Yes, they both said simultaneously. Helpful. The good news, Dex said, settling beside me on the ground, is that your abilities could help a lot of people. Heal pack rifts, mend spiritual wounds, strengthen supernatural communities that have been fractured by conflict. The bad news, Sage continued, is that kind of power will paint a target on your back the size of the moon. Every alpha with ambition, every pack looking for an advantage, every supernatural entity with a grudge will want to either control you or eliminate you. Fantastic. I dropped my head into my hands. So my options are become a magical weapon or die. There's a third option, Dex said quietly. I looked up to find him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Which is, you learn to control your abilities. You get strong enough to defend yourself. And you decide for yourself how you want to use your power. With our help, Sage added firmly. The Cedar Falls pack might be small, but we're not helpless. And we protect our own. The casual way she included me in that statement made something warm unfurl in my chest. When was the last time anyone had claimed me as theirs? When had anyone offered protection without expecting something in return? Why? I asked. Why would you risk your pack's safety for someone you barely know? Dex and Sage exchanged another one of those loaded looks. Because Cedar Falls was founded as a sanctuary, Sage said finally. Supernatural refugees, packless wolves, anyone fleeing persecution. This has always been a place where people could start over. And because, Dex added, his voice rougher than usual, sometimes the universe puts people in your path for a reason. Maybe you're here because you need our help. Or maybe we're the ones who need you. Before I could ask what he meant by that, a howl echoed through the forest, distant but unmistakably urgent. Dex was on his feet instantly, his body coiled for action. What is it? I asked. Border Patrol, he said grimly. Someone's approaching the territory. 2 more howls joined the first, and I caught scents on the wind that made my blood run cold. Aggressive. Territorial. Hunting. They're not here for a friendly visit, Sage said, already gathering her magical supplies. Luna, we need to get you somewhere safe. But I was already shaking my head. No. No more running. Luna. I said no. I stood, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. You said I needed to learn to fight back. So, let's start now. Dex stepped closer, his expression torn between admiration and concern. These aren't rogues or random threats. If someone tracked you here, they're serious players. Professional. Then it's time I became one too. The howls grew closer, and with them came the sound of vehicles, multiple engines moving fast. Whoever was coming, they weren't trying to be subtle about it. How many pack members do you have? I asked. Including Sage and myself? 8. Dex's jaw was tight. Not exactly overwhelming numbers. But you have something they don't expect, I said, silver light beginning to dance around my fingers again. This time, I didn't fight it. You have me. Luna, you don't understand how dangerous. No, you don't understand. I turned to face him fully, letting him see the determination in my eyes. I've spent my entire life being protected, being seen as weak, being told I wasn't enough. And where did it get me? Rejected, exiled, running scared. The light around my hands grew brighter, responding to my emotions. I may not know how to use this power yet, but I know one thing. I'm done being a victim. Headlights swept through the trees, and the first vehicle came into view. A black SUV with tinted windows, followed by 2 more identical cars. They moved with military precision, spreading out to surround Dex's property. Professional indeed, Sage muttered. The lead vehicle's doors opened, and men stepped out, all of them moving with the fluid grace of trained fighters. But it was the figure emerging from the passenger seat that made my heart stop. Tall, broad-shouldered, with storm-gray eyes and dark hair. Marcus Blackthorne, my former mate, looking every inch the powerful alpha he'd always been. And beside him, her auburn hair gleaming in the headlights, was Scarlett Morrison, the woman who'd taken my place, wearing a satisfied smile that made me want to shift and show her exactly what these new claws could do. Hello, Luna, Marcus called across the clearing, his voice carrying easily in the mountain air. We need to talk. Chapter 5. The silence stretched between us like a loaded weapon. Marcus stood 20 feet away, but I could smell his familiar scent on the wind, cedar and dominance, and the faint trace of regret he probably didn't even realize he was projecting. Beside him, Scarlett looked every inch the perfect Luna she'd always claimed to be. Her auburn hair was swept back in an elegant braid, her designer clothes somehow managing to look both practical and stunning. She wore Marcus's claiming mark on her throat like a trophy. Everything I'd once thought I wanted, handed to the woman who'd stolen it from me. "You shouldn't have come here," Dex said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of an alpha protecting his territory. "And you shouldn't have harbored a fugitive," Marcus replied coolly. "But here we are." "Fugitive?" I stepped forward, silver light flickering around my hands. "I'm not running from any crime, Marcus. I'm running from you." His gray eyes found mine across the clearing, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd once loved.
Pain.
Longing. The ghost of what we'd shared before ambition and politics destroyed it. Then his expression hardened. "You don't understand the situation you've put yourself in, Luna. There are things about your bloodline that you conveniently discovered after rejecting me?" My power flared brighter, responding to my anger. "How interesting that I wasn't worth keeping until you found out I might be useful." Scarlet stepped forward, her hand resting possessively on Marcus's arm. "This isn't about personal feelings anymore. The supernatural world is in chaos. Rogue packs are multiplying, ancient treaties are breaking down, and humans are starting to ask uncomfortable questions. We need unity. We need strength. We need you," Marcus said simply. The words I'd longed to hear for 3 years, finally spoken. And they meant absolutely nothing. "You rejected me," I said, my voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions churning inside me. "You severed our mate bond in front of the pack. You told me I wasn't strong enough, wasn't worthy enough to be your Luna. So tell me, Marcus, what's changed?" "Everything." He took a step closer, and Dex moved immediately to intercept him. The two alphas faced off, tension crackling between them like lightning. "Luna, the Council of Elders has been researching the old bloodlines. The Lunar Blessed weren't just healers, they were the key to supernatural survival. Without their power to bind communities together, our kind is dying out. Pack birth rates are down 60% in the last decade," Scarlet added. "Mate bonds are failing at unprecedented rates. The old magics that held our society together are fading. And you think I can fix that?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The same woman you deemed too weak to carry on your precious bloodline?" I was wrong. The admission came out rough, like Marcus had to force each word. I was focused on physical strength, on traditional warrior traits. "I didn't understand. You didn't understand that I had value beyond what I could do for you?" The silver light around me pulsed with each word. "You didn't understand that strength comes in different forms? That maybe, just maybe, I might have been exactly what you needed all along?" "Luna."
No.
I held up a hand, and to my surprise, both alphas stopped moving. Power radiated from me in waves, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly in control. "You made your choice, Marcus. You chose status over substance, politics over partnership. You chose her." My gaze shifted to Scarlet, who had the grace to look uncomfortable under my scrutiny. "Tell me, how's that working out for you? Are you everything he thought he needed?" Something flickered in her green eyes, doubt, maybe, or regret. "The pack is strong." "The pack is pretending to be strong," Sage interrupted, speaking for the first time since Marcus's arrival. "I can sense it from here. Your mate bond is artificial, forced together by politics rather than genuine connection. How long before it starts to crack under pressure?" Scarlet's face flushed, and Marcus's jaw tightened. Sage had hit a nerve. "Our relationship is none of your concern," Marcus said coldly. "It is when you show up in my territory making demands," Dex replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous rumble. "Luna is under my protection now. If you want to speak with her, you ask permission. Politely." "Permission?" Marcus's eyes flashed with alpha dominance. "She's still technically a member of my pack."
No.
The word came out loaded with power, silver light flaring around me like a beacon. "I am not a member of your pack. I am not your mate. I am not your anything. You made sure of that." The clearing fell silent except for the whisper of wind through pine needles. Even the insects had stopped their night chorus, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "So, why are you really here?" I continued. Because if you think you can just waltz back into my life and claim me like some kind of resource to be harvested, you're about to learn exactly how wrong you are. Marcus and Scarlet exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. There was calculation in it, strategy being wordlessly communicated between them. We're not the only ones who know what you are, Scarlet said finally. Word has gotten out about the last lunar blessed. Other packs are mobilizing. The Shadow Moon Collective put a bounty on your head 3 days ago. Ice water flooded my veins. The Shadow Moon Collective was a group of rogue alphas who'd been trying to consolidate power for decades, using any means necessary. If they wanted me, how much? Dex asked grimly. $5 million, Marcus replied. Dead or alive, though they prefer alive. Apparently, they have plans for Luna's abilities. The number hit like a physical blow. $5 million was enough to buy armies, to corrupt even the most loyal pack members, to turn allies into enemies overnight. Which is why she needs to come with us, Marcus continued. The Crescent Moon Pack has the resources to protect her, the alliances to keep her safe. This place, he gestured dismissively at the forest around us, is indefensible. This place, Dex said softly, is warded by magic older than your bloodline, protected by wolves who choose loyalty over profit, and defended by people who understand that some things are worth more than money. Pretty words, Scarlet said. But when the collective arrives with their mercenaries and their weapons, will your principles stop bullets? No, said a new voice from the Trilene. But these will. Figures melted out of the shadows, 7 wolves in human form, all armed, all moving with the coordinated precision of a military unit. They surrounded Marcus's people in seconds, weapons trained on the intruders with calm professionalism. Dex's pack. Small in number, but clearly not helpless. Now, Dex said, his voice carrying deadly calm, I'm going to suggest you leave my territory. Immediately. Marcus's eyes swept the circle of armed wolves, calculating odds. His own people were outnumbered and outmaneuvered, caught flat-footed by the speed and skill of Dex's response. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. I stepped forward, power crackling around me like barely contained lightning. Marcus, I want you to listen very carefully. I am not a prize to be won. I am not a weapon to be wielded. I am not a resource to be harvested. I am a woman who has finally learned her worth. The silver light around me flared brighter, and I saw several of his men take involuntary steps backward. If you ever come for me again, if you ever threaten these people who've shown me more kindness in 3 days than you did in 3 years, I will show you exactly what kind of power you threw away. And you will regret it for whatever's left of your miserable life. For a moment, Marcus looked like he might argue. Then he caught sight of my eyes, saw the absolute conviction burning there, and nodded slowly. Let's go, he told his people. They retreated to their vehicles with as much dignity as they could manage, but I caught the scent of fear rolling off several of them.
Good.
Let them be afraid. Just before getting into his SUV, Marcus turned back one last time. Luna.
I'm sorry.
For what it's worth, I really am sorry. Sorry doesn't unmake choices, Marcus. Sorry doesn't heal broken hearts. Sorry is just another word for regret, and regret changes nothing. He flinched as if I'd struck him, then got into the car without another word. Within minutes, the convoy was disappearing back down the mountain road, leaving only exhaust fumes and the acrid scent of burned rubber. Well, Sage said into the sudden quiet. That was dramatic. I turned to thank Dex and his pack, but the adrenaline crash hit me like a freight train. My knees buckled, and once again, strong arms caught me before I could fall. I've got you, Dex murmured against my hair. You did good, Luna. You were magnificent. I was terrified, I whispered. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. He helped me to a fallen log where I could sit down. And what you just did, standing up to your ex-mate, refusing to be treated like property, that took real courage. Around us, his pack members were efficiently checking the perimeter, making sure Marcus's people were really gone. They moved like a well-oiled machine, and I realized this wasn't the first time they'd dealt with unwanted visitors. $5 million, I said numbly. They're serious about this. Which means we need to be serious about preparing you, Sage said. No more gentle training sessions. No more easing you into your abilities. If the Shadow Moon Collective is coming, you need to be ready for war. How long do we have? Not long, Dex said grimly. Maybe a week if we're lucky. Word travels fast in our world, and now they know exactly where to find you. I looked around at these people who barely knew me, who were preparing to risk everything to keep me safe. You should just let me go. I could disappear again. Lead them away from here.
No.
The word came from multiple voices simultaneously, Dex, Sage, and several pack members who'd gathered around us. Luna, said a woman with short blonde hair and kind eyes. My name is Maya. I've been packless. I know what it feels like to have nowhere to belong, no one who claims you. Cedar Falls saved my life. Now it's our turn to save yours. Besides, added a tall man with graying temples, running from bullies just teaches them they can keep bullying. Sometimes you have to make a stand. Even if that stand might get you killed? Especially then, Dex said quietly. Because some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth protecting. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you're protecting turns out to be strong enough to fight beside you instead of just cowering behind you. His amber eyes met mine, and I saw something there that made my breath catch. Not just attraction or protectiveness, but genuine respect. He saw me, not as a prize or a weapon or a burden, but as a partner. An equal. When was the last time anyone had looked at me like that? Okay, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Teach me to fight. Chapter 6. The next 5 days blurred together in a haze of magical instruction, combat training, and barely controlled power surges that left scorch marks on half the trees around Dex's property. Focus, Sage commanded for the 100th time that afternoon. Your emotions are driving the magic, not controlling it. Feel the difference. I stood in the center of her ritual circle, sweat dripping down my face despite the mountain chill, trying to channel healing energy into a wilted flower without accidentally incinerating it. So far, I'd managed to grow it back to full bloom 3 times and reduce it to ash twice. I am focusing, I gritted out, silver light dancing around my fingertips. It's not exactly coming with an instruction manual. Because the lunar blessed were taught from childhood, she replied patiently. You're trying to compress 20 years of training into a week. Give yourself some credit. You've already surpassed most of the historical accounts. Most? There are stories about Celeste Moonwhisper, who could heal fatal wounds with a touch and bind mate souls from across continents. But those might be legends rather than facts. The flower in my hands pulsed with gentle silver light, its petals unfurling to reveal colors that didn't exist in nature, blue-white with edges that seemed to capture starlight itself. When I looked closer, I could see tiny symbols forming in the veins of each petal, writing itself in a language I didn't recognize but somehow understood. Protection. Strength. Love freely given. Sage, I whispered. Look at this. She hurried over, her eyes widening when she saw the flower. Luna, this isn't just healing magic. You're channeling pure lunar essence, binding intention into living matter. This is impossibly advanced. Before I could respond, a howl echoed across the clearing, the signal that Dex was returning from patrol. My heart did that stupid little skip it had been doing every time he came back, and I firmly told myself it was just relief that he was safe. I was lying, of course. Over the past 5 days, Dex had been teaching me to fight while Sage worked on my magical abilities. The combination was exhausting, exhilarating, and absolutely terrifying. But somewhere between learning to throw a proper punch and discovering I could channel moonlight into weapons, I'd started to feel something I hadn't experienced in years. I'd started to feel powerful. Dex emerged from the treeline in wolf form, a massive black beast with amber eyes that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. When he shifted back to human, I had to work very hard not to stare at the way his muscles rippled under his skin, or the casual grace with which he pulled on the clothes he'd left hanging from a nearby branch. Perimeter's clear, he reported, walking over to where Sage and I stood. No signs of the collective, but there's been increased rogue activity about 50 miles south. They're testing our borders. How many?
Sage asked.
At least a dozen. Maybe more. His expression was grim. They're being careful not to cross into our territory directly, but the message is clear. They're coming. I crushed the magical flower in my fist, watching silver light leak between my fingers. Then it's time to stop playing defense. Both of them turned to stare at me. Luna, Dex said carefully, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we end this before innocent people get hurt. I opened my hand, revealing that the crushed flower had transformed into a small sphere of pure light. The collective wants me?
Fine.
Let's give them what they want. Absolutely not. Dex's voice carried enough alpha authority to make my knees wobble. You're not using yourself as bait. Why not? It's a solid strategy. Because I won't lose you. The words came out raw, honest, stripped of any pretense. Luna, I can't. I won't watch you sacrifice yourself for our mistakes. The sphere of light in my palm flared brighter, responding to the emotion in his voice. Your mistakes. I should have hidden you better. Should have warded the entire mountain. Should have. I stepped closer, close enough to smell his scent, close enough to see the gold flecks in his amber eyes.
Dex.
This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Isn't it? His hands clenched into fists at his sides. I'm the alpha. It's my job to protect my pack, and that includes you now. If something happens to you, because I couldn't. Stop. I reached up and cupped his face in my hands, the light sphere dissolving back into ordinary magic. Stop carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Stop thinking you have to save everyone alone. Luna. I'm not Marcus's rejected mate anymore, I said firmly. I'm not a victim who needs constant protection. I'm a woman who's discovered she has the power to level mountains if she chooses to. And I choose to use that power to protect the people I care about. Something shifted in his expression, heat replacing worry. The people you care about? You. I said simply. Sage.
Maya.
Your pack. The people who looked at a broken stranger and decided she was worth saving. I paused, gathering courage. Especially you. He went very still. Luna, you should know. That you feel it too? I stepped closer, until there was barely an inch between us. This thing that's been building between us all week? This connection that has nothing to do with mate bonds or destiny or magical bloodlines. You don't understand. His voice was rough. I can't offer you what Marcus did. I can't give you the status, the political connections, I don't want what Marcus offered. I rose up on my toes, bringing our faces level. I want what you're offering. Respect.
Partnership.
The chance to be myself without apology. And if that self is dangerous, if your power keeps growing until you could accidentally hurt people, then you'll help me learn control. You'll anchor me when the magic gets too strong. You'll trust me to make the right choices. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. The way you've been doing all week. He stared at me for a long moment, some internal battle playing out behind his eyes. Then, with a muttered curse, he wrapped his arms around me and kissed me like the world was ending. Maybe it was. The moment our lips touched, power exploded through me. Not destructive, but transformative. Silver light erupted around us, and I felt something lock into place inside my chest, a connection deeper than mate bonds or magic or anything I'd ever experienced. Recognition. Two souls finding their match. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard, and the clearing around us had transformed. Every flower was in bloom despite the season. Every tree glowed with soft silver light, and the air itself hummed with beneficial magic. Well, Sage said from somewhere behind us, her voice amused. That was illuminating. I turned in Dex's arms to find her grinning at us, her notebook already out and scribbling furiously. I gestured at the magical garden we'd apparently created. How did? True connection amplifies lunar-blessed power, she explained cheerfully. When you find someone who truly sees you, accepts you, complements your energy, well, the magic responds accordingly. Are you saying we're mates? Dex asked, his arms still wrapped around me. I'm saying you're compatible on a level that transcends traditional supernatural bonds. Whether you call that mates or partners or something entirely new is up to you. I looked up at Dex, seeing my own wonder reflected in his amber eyes. How do you feel about being bound to a woman who could accidentally level a city if she sneezes wrong? How do you feel about being bound to a man who's spent the last 5 years hiding from his own past? Intrigued, I said honestly. What kind of past? Before he could answer, howls erupted from multiple directions. Urgent, warning calls that made both our heads snap toward the forest. They're here, Dex said grimly, already shifting into alpha mode. Sage, get to the safe house. Luna is staying right here, I finished. We do this together or we don't do it at all. More howls closer now. The scent of strangers on the wind, aggressive and hunting. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of movement, too many figures to count, all converging on our position. How many pack members do we have in the area? I asked. 6, including us, Dex replied, his voice tight with controlled tension. They've got us outnumbered at least 3-1. I felt power surge through me, responding to the threat and my own determination. Silver light began to dance around my hands, and when I looked at the magical garden surrounding us, an idea formed. Dex, I said slowly, how do you feel about fighting dirty? He followed my gaze, understanding dawning in his expression. What do you have in mind? I'm going to show the Shadow Moon Collective exactly what happens when you threaten my pack. The first wave of attackers burst into the clearing just as I opened myself fully to the lunar magic flowing through my veins. Power erupted from me like a silver tsunami, and every plant, every tree, every blade of grass began to glow with defensive energy. The battle for Cedar Falls had begun, and I intended to end it. Chapter 7. The Shadow Moon Collective had come prepared for a simple extraction mission. What they got instead was a nightmare of lunar magic and territorial fury that would be talked about in supernatural circles for decades. The moment the first attacker stepped into my magically charged clearing, the earth itself rose up to stop him. Vines erupted from the ground, wrapping around his legs with crushing force, while the trees above dropped branches like guided missiles. Silver light poured from every surface, disorienting and blinding the invaders. What the hell? One of them shouted, right before a massive oak branch knocked him unconscious. I stood in the center of the chaos, power flowing through me like liquid starlight, directing the magical defenses with movements that felt as natural as breathing. This was what I was meant to be, not a cowering omega hiding behind stronger wolves, but a force of nature protecting what mattered. Luna, behind you. Dex's warning came just in time. I spun, silver light flaring from my hands, and caught an attacker mid-leap. The magic wrapped around him like chains, suspending him in the air before depositing him gently but firmly in a cage of thorned vines. Alive, not dead, I called to Dex, who was systematically working his way through a group of mercenaries with brutal efficiency. We need information. Noted, he replied, switching from lethal strikes to precisely targeted blows that left his opponents unconscious but breathing. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Sage had joined us despite orders to retreat, wielding magical barriers that deflected bullets and redirected energy weapons. Maya and the other pack members fought with the coordinated precision of wolves protecting their den, while I became something entirely new. The longer the fight went on, the stronger I grew. Every threat to my pack, every attack on the people I cared about, fed the power burning in my veins. I wasn't just defending territory, I was defending home, family,
Love.
and apparently that made all the difference. The turning point came when their leader stepped into view, a massive man with cold eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. Power radiated from him in waves, marking him as an alpha of considerable strength. Enough! His voice boomed across the clearing, loaded with supernatural authority. Stand down, all of you. We didn't come here to destroy the place. The fighting gradually stopped, both sides backing away, but staying ready for renewed violence. I kept my magical defenses active, silver light crackling around my hands like barely contained lightning. "You came here for me," I said, stepping forward. "So here I am. What do you want?" He smiled, and it was the expression of a predator sizing up prey. "Tobias Grimm, Alpha of the Shadow Moon Collective. And you, Luna Ashwood, are worth far more than $5 million. Flattering. Also irrelevant, since I'm not for sale. Everything is for sale at the right price." His gaze swept over my pack, calculating. "Your friends here, for instance. Their lives against your cooperation. Seems like a fair trade." Ice water flooded my veins, but before I could respond, Dex stepped up beside me. "Try it," he said quietly. "Please. I could use the exercise." Tobias's eyes narrowed as he studied Dex more carefully. "Alexander Nightwind. I wondered where you disappeared to." Dex went rigid beside me. "That name is dead." "Is it?" Tobias's smile widened. "How interesting that the disgraced heir to the Nightwind legacy is playing alpha to a pack of strays. What would Daddy say if he knew where his precious son ended up?" The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Nightwind, one of the oldest, most powerful alpha bloodlines in North America. Dex wasn't just some small-town pack leader. He was supernatural royalty who'd somehow ended up in exile. "Luna," Dex said without taking his eyes off Tobias, "whatever he tells you, whatever he claims about my past." "The past is the past," I said firmly, though my mind was reeling. "Right now, all that matters is getting these people off our land." "Our land?" Tobias raised an eyebrow. "How quickly you claim territory that isn't yours. Tell me, Luna, what did Alexander promise you? What lies did he whisper to win your loyalty?" "He didn't have to promise me anything," I replied, letting more power flow into my voice. "He earned my loyalty by treating me like a person instead of a commodity. And when you discover what he's really running from, when you learn why the Nightwind Pack disowned their heir, will your loyalty survive the truth?" "Why don't you tell her?" Dex said, his voice deadly calm. "Go ahead, Tobias. Share your version of events. I'm sure it'll be fascinating." For a moment, uncertainty flickered in Tobias's eyes. Whatever he'd expected, it wasn't Dex's willingness to have his secrets revealed. "The Nightwind Pack was betrayed from within," Tobias said finally. "Alexander's mate was murdered by his own brother, and he killed him for it," Dex finished. "Yes, I murdered my own brother to avenge my mate's death. Is that the terrible secret you were hoping would turn Luna against me?" The clearing fell silent except for the whisper of wind through leaves. I stared at Dex, trying to process what I'd just learned. He'd been mated before. He'd lost that mate to violence. He'd killed family to avenge her. And somehow, none of that changed how I felt about him. "You've been through hell," I said quietly. "Just like me. Luna. No wonder you ended up in a sanctuary town." I reached for his hand, not caring that we had an audience. "No wonder you understand what it means to start over." "You're not horrified?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "I'm horrified that you had to go through that. I'm heartbroken that you lost someone you loved. But horrified by you? Never." Tobias made a sound of disgust. How touching. A murderer and a failed Luna, finding love in the ashes of their broken lives. The insult hit like a spark to gasoline. Power exploded from me, silver light erupting in a column that reached toward the stars. When I spoke, my voice carried the authority of something far older and more dangerous than any alpha. "I am not a failed Luna. I am something you've never encountered before, a woman who's learned her worth, claimed her power, and chosen her own path." The light around me pulsed with each word. "And you, Tobias Grimm, have made a critical error in judgment." "What error is that?" "You assumed I was still the broken, rejected Omega who fled her pack a week ago. But that woman is gone. In her place stands someone who's discovered that true strength comes not from domination, but from protecting what you love." I raised my hands, and every plant in the clearing responded. Vines erupted from the earth, Trees bent to create barriers, and flowers bloomed with such intensity that their perfume became intoxicating. The very air began to shimmer with defensive magic. "You have 30 seconds to leave my territory," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the forest. After that, I stopped playing nice. "You think your garden magic can stop trained soldiers?" Tobias laughed, but there was nervous energy underneath the bravado. "I think you're about to find out." What happened next would be debated in supernatural circles for years. Some said I called down the moon itself. Others claimed I transformed the entire forest into a living weapon. A few insisted I temporarily became something beyond werewolf, beyond human, beyond anything with a name. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. I stopped holding back. Power poured from me in waves that made reality ripple. The forest became my extension, every tree and flower and blade of grass connected to my will. I could feel every heartbeat in the clearing, could sense the fear radiating from Tobias's people as they realized they'd vastly underestimated their target. "Retreat," Tobias ordered, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Fall back to the vehicles." "Smart choice," I replied, though I didn't lower my defenses. "But if you ever threaten my pack again, if you even think about returning to Cedar Falls, I will hunt you down and show you exactly what happens when you make an enemy of a lunar blessed." They retreated with as much dignity as they could manage, but I caught the scent of fear rolling off most of them. Word would spread. The supernatural community would know that the last lunar blessed was not to be trifled with.
Good.
Let them know. As the sound of vehicles faded into the distance, the magical light around me gradually dimmed. The forest settled back into its normal patterns, though everything still glowed with residual energy. "Is everyone okay?" I called, scanning the clearing for injuries. "Define okay," Maya said weakly from where she was leaning against a tree. "I think I may never look at flowers the same way again." "No serious injuries," Sage reported, though she was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Luna, that was unprecedented." "That was terrifying," Dex said, but his tone was admiring rather than afraid. "You just faced down one of the most dangerous alphas in the country and made him blink first." "We faced him down," I corrected. "All of us. This is what a real pack does. We protect each other." The words hung in the air, loaded with meaning. Because somewhere in the chaos of battle, something fundamental had shifted. These people weren't just my allies or my protectors anymore. They were my family. "So," I said, turning to face Dex fully. "Alexander Nightwind, huh? Any other secrets you'd like to share?" "A few," he admitted, "but they can wait. Right now, I'm more interested in discussing our territory comment you made." Heat rose in my cheeks. I may have gotten a little carried away in the moment. May have. Okay, I definitely got carried away. But it felt right, calling this place ours. It felt like home. He stepped closer, his amber eyes warm with affection and something deeper. "Is that what this is? Home?" For the first time in my life, yes. I looked around at the clearing, at the pack members who'd fought beside me, at the man who'd seen me at my most broken and helped me find my strength again. "This is home." "Then welcome to the family," he said, pulling me into his arms. "Officially." Around us, the pack erupted in howls of celebration. Wild, joyful sounds that echoed across the mountain and announced to the world that Cedar Falls had claimed a new daughter. And I held back, my voice joining theirs in perfect harmony. Chapter 8. The nightmare was always the same, silver light turning to flames, my power consuming everything I touched, the people I loved burning while I stood helpless to stop it. In the dream, Dex reached for me with trust in his amber eyes, only to crumble to ash the moment our skin made contact. "Luna, you're safe. You're safe." His voice cut through the terror, real and solid, and wonderfully alive. Strong arms pulled me against a warm chest, and I breathed in a scent, pine and storm winds, and the indefinable essence that meant home. "I hurt you," I whispered against his shoulder, my body still shaking with phantom fear. In the dream, I couldn't control it, and I It was just a dream. His hand stroked through my hair, gentle and soothing. You didn't hurt anyone. You saved us all, remember? But that was the problem. I did remember. I remembered the intoxicating rush of unlimited power, the way it had felt to bend reality to my will, the terrifying ease with which I could have leveled the entire mountain if I'd chosen to. What if next time I wasn't strong enough to choose restraint? Dex, I said quietly, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. When I was fighting Tobias and his people for a moment there, I wanted to kill them. Not just stop them or drive them away. I wanted to end them completely. The confession tasted like ash. The power made it feel so easy, so justified. And that terrifies me. He was quiet for a long moment, his hand never stopping its gentle motion through my hair. When I killed my brother, he said finally, it felt justified too. He'd murdered my mate in cold blood, torn her throat out while she begged for mercy. Taking his life seemed like justice. But afterward, I realized that revenge and justice aren't the same thing. And that power, whether it's alpha strength or magical ability, can make almost anything feel justified if you let it. He pulled back to look at me, his amber eyes serious. The fact that your power scares you, that you question your motives, Luna, that's not a weakness. That's wisdom. What if I lose control? What if next time? Then I'll be there to anchor you. Sage will be there to guide you. Your pack will be there to remind you who you really are. His thumb traced along my cheekbone. You're not alone in this anymore. Before I could respond, urgent knocking echoed through the cabin. Dex was on his feet instantly, pulling on jeans and moving toward the door with fluid predator grace. Alpha, Maya's voice called from outside. We have a problem. When Dex opened the door, Maya stood there with dirt on her clothes and worry etched across her features. Behind her, two strangers waited, an older woman with silver hair and regal bearing, and a young man who looked barely out of his teens. They came through the southern border about an hour ago, Maya explained. Alone, unarmed, asking for sanctuary. The older woman stepped forward, and I immediately recognized the authority radiating from her. Another alpha, but one who carried her power like a well-worn coat rather than a weapon. Alexander, she said, her voice warm with genuine affection. You look well. Dex went rigid. Mother. Mother? I stared at the elegant woman, seeing the resemblance now. The same amber eyes, the same aristocratic bone structure, the same way of holding themselves like they owned whatever space they occupied. May we come in? She asked. There are things we need to discuss. Privately. Of course. Dex stepped aside, though tension radiated from every line of his body. Maya, thank you. Could you let Sage know we have guests? As the strangers entered, I suddenly became acutely aware that I was wearing nothing but Dex's oversized t-shirt and yesterday's underwear. Heat flooded my cheeks as the older woman's knowing gaze took in the rumpled bed, my disheveled appearance, and the obvious intimacy of the situation. I should go, I said quickly, looking around for my clothes.
No.
Dex's voice carried enough alpha authority to stop me mid-step. Luna, I'd like you to meet my mother, Elizabeth Nightwind, alpha of the Nightwind Pack, and my nephew, Ethan. His expression softened slightly as he looked at the young man. David's son. The name hit like a physical blow. David, the brother Dex had killed, which meant Ethan was the son of the man you murdered, Ethan said quietly, his voice carrying more exhaustion than anger. Yes. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. I could feel Dex's pain like a living thing, could see the way guilt and regret warred with protective instincts in his expression. Ethan, Elizabeth said gently, we discussed this. I know what we discussed, grandmother. But pretending Uncle Alex didn't kill my father isn't going to make this conversation any easier. No, Dex said quietly, it won't. Ethan, I know nothing I say can justify what I did. I know I took your father from you, and that's a debt I can never repay. Actually, Ethan said, surprising everyone, that's why we're here. He pulled a leather journal from his jacket, its pages yellowed with age. After you disappeared, I started going through Father's things. I found this hidden in his study, along with some other interesting materials. Dex took the journal with hands that weren't quite steady. As he opened it, his face went pale, then flushed with anger. "What is it?" I asked, moving to read over his shoulder. The pages were filled with David's handwriting, detailing plans that made my blood run cold. Surveillance of Dex's mate, Elena. Records of her daily routines, her weaknesses, her fears. And at the end, a detailed account of her murder, written like a hunting trophy. "He didn't kill her in a rage," Dex whispered, his voice hollow. "He planned it, stalked her for weeks, waiting for the perfect opportunity." "There's more," Ethan said grimly. "Records of communications with other pack members who felt you were too soft to lead the Nightwind legacy. They were planning a coup, Uncle Alex. Father's murder of Elena was supposed to break you, make you unfit to rule. Instead, it made me kill him," Dex said numbly. "Which is exactly what they wanted. Your exile cleared the way for their chosen successor to take power." Elizabeth's voice was tight with old anger. "I've spent the last 5 years rooting out the conspirators, but the damage was done. The pack has been fractured, weakened by infighting and power struggles." I stared at them both, trying to process the implications. "You're saying Dex was manipulated into killing his brother?" "I'm saying my son was forced into an impossible situation by people who cared more about political power than family bonds," Elizabeth replied. "Alexander, you were protecting your mate's memory and your own sanity. What you did was terrible, but it wasn't murder, it was justice." "Justice doesn't bring Elena back," Dex said roughly. "And it doesn't undo the fact that I orphaned my nephew." "No," Ethan said quietly, "but understanding the truth helps. Uncle Alex, I spent 5 years hating you for taking my father away. But after reading his journal, after learning what kind of man he really was..." He shrugged. "I think maybe you saved me from finding out the hard way." The raw honesty in the young man's voice broke something open in Dex's chest. I watched as years of guilt and self-recrimination cracked like ice in spring, letting something warmer seep through. "Why are you here?" Dex asked finally. "What do you need from me?" "We need you to come home," Elizabeth said simply. "The pack is dying, Alexander. Without strong leadership, without the unity your presence would bring, we're fragmenting into smaller territories that can't defend themselves." "I can't. There have been 3 rogue attacks in the last month," she continued relentlessly. 7 pack members dead, including 2 children. The Shadow Moon Collective has been recruiting our disaffected youth with promises of power and belonging. We're losing everything our family built over generations. I felt Dex's anguish like a physical weight. His pack, his birthright, was suffering while he played exile in the mountains. But going back would mean leaving Cedar Falls, leaving the sanctuary he'd built, leaving... "What about Luna?" he asked, his hand finding mine. "She's under my protection. I can't abandon her." "We wouldn't ask you to," Elizabeth said, her gaze moving to me with new interest. "In fact, Luna Ashwood might be exactly what the Nightwind pack needs." "I don't understand." "The Lunar Blessed bloodline has ancient ties to the great pack families," she explained. "Your ancestor, Marcus Nightwind, was bonded to a lunar blessed healer named Seraphina Moonwhisper. Their union created one of the strongest supernatural dynasties in history." My breath caught. "Marcus Nightwind? But that means that your bloodlines are compatible on a level that transcends normal mate bonds," Elizabeth finished. "If the stories are true, a Nightwind lunar blessed pairing could restore not just one pack, but the entire supernatural community." "No pressure," I muttered, feeling the weight of destiny settling around my shoulders like a lead blanket. Dex squeezed my hand. "Luna, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." The words surprised me, but as soon as I spoke them, I knew they were true. "Dex, people are dying. Children are dying. How can I hide here knowing my abilities might help?" "Because it's dangerous," he said fiercely. "Because going back puts you directly in the path of every power-hungry alpha who wants to use you. Because I just found you, and I can't lose you too." The raw pain in his voice made my heart clench. But underneath the fear, I could sense something else, hope. The chance to reclaim his heritage, to help his people, to become the leader he was meant to be. What if we didn't have to choose? I said slowly. What if there was a way to help the Nightwind Pack without abandoning Cedar Falls? What do you mean? An alliance. A formal bond between the territories that would let us share resources, protection, knowledge. The idea took shape as I spoke. Cedar Falls could become a sanctuary outpost of the larger Nightwind territory. Refugees and packless wolves would have a safe haven, while the main pack benefits from our magical defenses and healing abilities. Elizabeth's eyes lit up. A federation rather than a traditional hierarchy. It's unconventional. So, is having the last lunar blessed as your son's mate? I pointed out. Maybe it's time for some unconventional solutions. It could work, Ethan said, excitement creeping into his voice. Grandmother, think about it. Uncle Alex would have his leadership position back, but without the isolation from his chosen family. And Luna could help heal the rifts that have been tearing us apart. There would be resistance, Elizabeth warned. Some of the old guard still believe in traditional power structures. Then they'll have to learn that times have changed, Dex said, his voice carrying the authority of an alpha who'd finally remembered his own worth. Luna, are you sure about this? Once we announce our bond, once you officially join the Nightwind family, there's no going back. I'm not looking to go back, I said firmly. I'm looking to go forward. With you. With our pack. All of it. He studied my face for a long moment, searching for any sign of doubt or hesitation. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. Then let's go home, he said. And let's show the supernatural world what a real partnership looks like. Outside the cabin, dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of silver and gold. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the howls of the Cedar Falls pack beginning their morning rounds, my family going about their daily lives, trusting that I would protect them. Now I had a chance to protect so much more. But first, we had to survive the political minefield of supernatural high society. And something told me that would be more dangerous than any battle we'd faced yet. Chapter 9. The Nightwind Pack compound looked like something from a fairy tale, if fairy tales included bulletproof glass and magical wards that could incinerate intruders. Sprawling across a valley in the Montana wilderness, the main house was a massive log and stone structure that managed to be both rustic and elegant. Smaller cabins dotted the landscape like satellites, connected by winding paths that seemed to follow some ancient design. Everything was perfectly maintained, perfectly positioned, perfectly controlled. It was beautiful. It was impressive. And it felt nothing like home. Second thoughts. Dex asked quietly as our convoy of vehicles wound down the mountain road toward the compound. Third and fourth thoughts, I admitted, watching pack members emerge from buildings to stare at our approaching cars. Are you sure they're going to accept me? They'll accept you, because I accept you. And if they don't? His smile held enough predatory promise to make me shiver. Well, they'll learn. The Alpha's authority in his voice was absolute, but I could sense the tension underneath. This homecoming wasn't easy for him either. 5 years was a long time to be away, especially under such painful circumstances. Our car pulled up to the main house, where a crowd had gathered on the wide front porch. I recognized some faces from old pack photos Dex had shown me, older council members, family friends, distant relatives. Others were strangers, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Showtime, I murmured, checking my appearance one last time in the side mirror. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple but elegant dress in deep forest green, with my grandmother's moonstone pendant as the only jewelry. Professional enough to command respect, but not so formal as to seem like I was trying too hard. Elizabeth had assured me that first impressions mattered in pack politics, and judging by the scrutiny I was getting, she'd been right. Dex stepped out first, and I watched the crowd's reaction. Whispered conversations died away, replaced by an electric tension that made the air itself feel charged. He looked every inch the alpha heir he'd been born to be. Tall, commanding, radiating confidence and barely leashed power. When he opened my door and offered his hand, the gesture felt loaded with significance. This wasn't just a boyfriend helping his girlfriend out of a car. This was an alpha publicly claiming his chosen mate, making a statement that would echo through every supernatural community in the country. I took his hand and stepped into my new life. "Members of the Nightwind Pack," Dex said, his voice carrying easily across the gathering. "I'd like you to meet Luna Ashwood, my mate and your future Luna." The response was immediate and mixed. Some pack members stepped forward with welcoming smiles, while others exchanged glances that clearly conveyed skepticism. I caught fragments of whispered conversations. "Outsider, packless. Not one of us." But it was the scent that really told the story. Curiosity from some, wariness from others, and from a few individuals near the back of the crowd, outright hostility that made my wolf stir uneasily. "Welcome home, Alexander." An older man stepped forward, his bearing marking him as someone of importance within the pack hierarchy. "We've missed your leadership." "Thank you, Councilmember Harrison," Dex replied formally. "Though I should clarify, I'm not returning as the same man who left. Luna and I come as partners, not as alpha and submissive mate. Our leadership will be shared, our decisions made together." Another ripple of reaction swept through the crowd. Shared leadership wasn't unheard of in the supernatural world, but it was rare, and traditionally limited to pairs where both partners were from established pack bloodlines. "With respect, Alpha," said a woman near the front, "what qualifications does Miss Ashwood bring to such a position? What experience does she have in pack leadership?" Before Dex could respond, I stepped forward. This was my moment to make an impression, and I intended to make it count. "You're right to question my qualifications," I said, letting my voice carry the quiet confidence I'd learned from watching Elizabeth. "I have no formal training in pack politics. I've never governed a territory or negotiated treaties or balanced pack budgets." Agreement murmured through the crowd, but I wasn't finished. "What I do have," I continued, "is the ability to heal wounds that go deeper than flesh. To mend bonds that have been broken by betrayal and loss. To protect what matters with power that comes from the earth itself." I raised my hand, letting silver light dance across my palm. Not threatening, but unmistakably present. "I am Luna Ashwood, last of the lunar blessed bloodline. I carry the magic of my ancestors, the strength of my convictions, and the love of a man who's shown me what true partnership looks like." The light in my palm flared brighter, and I felt the response from the assembled pack, not just seeing the magic, but feeling it. The lunar-blessed power called to something deep in their supernatural souls, something that recognized and yearned for the healing they'd lost. "I can't promise to be the Luna you expect," I said as the light faded. "But I can promise to be the Luna you need. To stand beside your alpha not as a shadow, but as his equal. To protect this pack with everything I have, because protection is what family does for each other." Silence stretched across the gathering, broken only by the whisper of wind through pine trees. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the crowd, slow applause began. It spread gradually, growing in volume and enthusiasm, until most of the pack was clapping. "Most but not all." "Pretty words," called a voice from the back. "But words don't stop bullets. Words don't win territory disputes. When the Shadow Moon Collective comes for us, and they will, what good will your healing magic do against modern weapons?" The crowd parted to reveal a man in his 40s with the build of a career soldier and eyes like chips of ice. Power radiated from him, marking him as another alpha, probably one of the pack's war leaders. "Commander Stone," Elizabeth said sharply. "Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself properly." "Marcus Stone, head of pack security." His gaze swept over me dismissively. "And I think it's fair to ask whether our new Luna has any actual combat experience, or if we're expected to protect her while she tends the flower garden." Heat flashed through me. Not anger, but something hotter and more dangerous. This man was testing me, pushing to see if I'd crumble under pressure or lash out like an amateur. Either reaction would mark me as weak in the eyes of the pack. Time to show him exactly what kind of flower gardener I was. You're right that words don't stop bullets, I said calmly, walking down the porch steps toward where he stood. But let me ask you something, Commander Stone. How many of your security protocols account for an enemy who can turn the very ground beneath your feet into a weapon? I knelt and placed my palm against the earth, letting power flow through the connection. Immediately, the grass around my hand began to glow with silver light, and I felt the vast network of root systems and stone formations that lay beneath the compound. How many of your contingency plans include an ally who can communicate with every plant and animal for miles around? I continued, standing but keeping my connection to the earth active. Who can create barriers that bullets can't penetrate, or healing sanctuaries that can treat a dozen wounded pack members simultaneously? The ground beneath Stone's feet began to sprout flowers, not threatening, but unmistakably under my control. Who can sense approaching enemies through the forest itself, or track a scent trail that's days old by asking the trees what they remember? His eyes widened as he realized the implications. A lunar blessed didn't just have magical healing abilities. We were living connections to the natural world, capable of turning any wilderness into a defensive fortress. The Shadow Moon Collective uses conventional tactics because that's all they understand, I said, letting the flowers bloom larger and brighter. They think in terms of superior firepower and numerical advantage. But they've never faced an enemy who can make the very forest rise up against them. I gestured, and every flower in the compound's gardens responded, roses climbing toward the house, daisies forming perfect spirals, cherry blossoms falling like snow despite the season. The display was beautiful, peaceful, and absolutely undeniable proof of power. So, yes, Commander, I concluded. I have combat experience. 3 days ago, I single-handedly defeated a force of 20 mercenaries without killing a single one of them. Because sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the one that destroys, but the one that protects. The silence that followed was different from before, charged with respect rather than curiosity. Stone himself looked like he was reevaluating everything he thought he knew about the supernatural hierarchy. Well, he said finally, that's not what I expected. Good, Dex said, his voice warm with pride and amusement. Luna specializes in exceeding expectations. Indeed she does, Elizabeth agreed, moving to stand beside us. Which brings us to why we've called this gathering. The Nightwind Pack stands at a crossroads. We can continue to fragment and weaken until we're nothing more than a minor territorial holding, or we can embrace change and become something stronger than we've ever been. She gestured toward Dex and me. Alexander and Luna represent that change. A partnership built on mutual respect, combined strength, and shared purpose. They've proven themselves in battle, shown their commitment to protecting those under their care, and brought us an alliance with the Cedar Falls Sanctuary. What kind of alliance? Asked Council Member Harrison. A federation, Dex replied. The Nightwind Pack reclaims its position as a major supernatural power, while Cedar Falls becomes our sanctuary territory, a safe haven for packless wolves, refugees, and anyone seeking a fresh start. The benefits are obvious, I added. Increased territory, expanded resources, enhanced defensive capabilities, and a reputation as a pack that values both strength and compassion. And the risks? Stone asked. That we become too powerful for our enemies to ignore, Dex said honestly. That our success draws attacks from groups who prefer the status quo. That we have to work harder to maintain unity across multiple territories and diverse populations. Those are manageable risks, Elizabeth said firmly. What we can't manage is continued stagnation. The supernatural world is changing whether we adapt or not. The question is whether we lead that change or become casualties of it. A new voice spoke from the crowd, young, female, carrying the authority of someone used to being heard. And what about those of us who've been keeping this pack together while the air played Herman in the mountains? The speaker stepped forward, and I immediately understood why her voice had sounded familiar. She was strikingly beautiful in a classical way, tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of features that belonged on magazine covers. But it was her scent that triggered recognition.
Alpha.
This was another Alpha, and judging by the deference some pack members showed her, she'd been filling the leadership vacuum Dex had left behind. "Vivian Ashford," Dex said quietly. "I wondered when you'd make your appearance." "Vivian Ashford Nightwind," she corrected with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm your cousin's widow, Alexander, and I've been serving as interim pack leader for the past 2 years." The political implications hit me like a cold shower. This woman hadn't just been maintaining the status quo. She'd been building her own power base, establishing her own claim to leadership. Dex's return wasn't just a homecoming. It was a challenge to someone who'd grown comfortable in his absence. "Vivian," Elizabeth said carefully, "we discussed this. Your leadership during the transition period has been invaluable, but now the prodigal son returns with his shiny new mate, and we're all supposed to step aside?" Vivian's laugh was sharp. "Forgive me if I need more than pretty light shows and stirring speeches to be convinced." The crowd stirred uneasily, sensing the tension between competing power structures. This was exactly the kind of internal conflict that could tear a pack apart. "What would convince you?" I asked, stepping forward before the situation could escalate further. Vivian's eyes glittered with something that might have been anticipation.
A challenge.
Traditional pack law. "If you want to be our Luna, prove you're worthy of the position." "What kind of challenge?" Dex asked, though his tone suggested he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. "Combat," Vivian said simply. "Luna Ashwood against me, witnessed by the pack. Winner takes the leadership position." The gathering erupted in excited murmurs. A formal challenge was rare but not unheard of, and pack law was clear. Any member could contest leadership through trial by combat. "Absolutely not," Dex said flatly. "I won't let Luna be put at risk to satisfy your political ambitions." "It's not your choice," Vivian replied sweetly. "Pack law gives me the right to issue a challenge and Luna the right to accept or decline." All eyes turned to me, waiting for my decision. I could decline, of course. No one would question my courage after the display I'd just given. But declining would also mark me as someone who avoided direct confrontation, someone who relied on others to fight her battles. And deep down, part of me was curious. I'd faced mercenaries and rogue wolves, but I'd never tested myself against another alpha in formal combat. "I accept," I said, ignoring Dex's sharp intake of breath. "When and where?" Vivian's smile turned predatory. "Tomorrow at dawn. The old amphitheater. Traditional rules, shifted form, no weapons, fight until one submits or can't continue." "Luna," Dex said urgently, "you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I met his worried gaze steadily. "I understand that this pack needs to see their Luna can hold her own against any threat. I understand that avoiding this challenge would create more problems than facing it. And I understand that you trust me to know my own capabilities." The last part was both a statement and a question. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "I trust you," he said, "but that doesn't mean I have to like it." "Excellent," Vivian said, clapping her hands together. "This should be educational." As the crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the upcoming challenge, I caught sight of Commander Stone watching me with newfound respect. "You know she's going to try to kill you, right?" he said quietly. "I know she's going to try," I replied. "But trying and succeeding are two very different things." "What makes you so confident?" I smiled, letting just a hint of silver light dance around my fingertips. "Because I'm not just fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for my pack, my mate, and my future. And that makes me very dangerous indeed." As night fell over the Nightwind compound, I prepared for the most important battle of my life. Not just for leadership, but for the right to protect everything I'd come to love. And I intended to win. Chapter 10. Dawn came too soon and not soon enough. I'd spent the night in meditation, connecting with the lunar-blessed power that flowed through my veins, preparing mind and body for what was to come. Dex had wanted to stay with me, but pack tradition demanded that both combatants spend the pre-fight hours alone, contemplating the gravity of what they were about to undertake. Now, as the first pale light crested the mountains, I made my way to the amphitheater. The old stone circle was a relic from the pack's founding, carved into a natural depression in the hillside and worn smooth by centuries of ceremonies. Rows of stone benches rose in tiers around a circular fighting pit, and this morning they were packed with every pack member who could make the journey. Vivian was already there, stretching in the center of the ring. She'd traded her elegant clothes for simple workout gear that showed off an impressively muscular physique. Every movement radiated controlled violence, and when she caught sight of me, her smile was all teeth. "Having second thoughts, little Luna?" she called. "Just admiring the sunrise," I replied, stepping into the circle. "It's beautiful. Seems like a lovely day to establish some new traditions." Elizabeth stood at the edge of the pit, serving as the official witness. "The challenge has been issued and accepted," she announced, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "Combat will continue until one participant yields or is unable to continue. Are both fighters ready?" "Ready," Vivian said, already beginning her shift. I nodded, feeling my own wolf stir in anticipation. "Ready." "Then let the trial begin." The transformation hit me like a wave of electricity. Bones lengthened and reformed, muscles shifted and strengthened, and my human consciousness merged with my wolf's instincts in a symphony of controlled change. When it was complete, I stood on 4 legs in my silver-gray coat, power humming through every fiber of my being. Across from me, Vivian's wolf was a thing of beauty and terror, larger than mine, with a coat of pristine white and ice-blue eyes that held no warmth whatsoever. She was built for fighting, all lean muscle and deadly grace. We circled each other warily, testing for weaknesses, looking for openings. The crowd had fallen silent, every eye focused on the ancient drama playing out before them. Vivian struck first. She launched herself across the circle with breathtaking speed, going for my throat in a move that would have ended the fight immediately if it had connected. But I'd been expecting something like this, a fast, brutal opening designed to overwhelm before I could bring my magical abilities into play. I twisted aside at the last second, her claws raking harmlessly past my shoulder. Before she could recover, I spun and caught her back leg with my teeth, not hard enough to cause serious damage, but sufficient to send a clear message. I wasn't prey. She snarled and whipped around, snapping at my muzzle. I danced backward, keeping just out of range while I assessed her fighting style. Fast, aggressive, relying on superior size and strength to overpower opponents quickly. Traditional alpha tactics, which meant I needed to be anything but traditional. I reached out with my power, feeling for the life force of the plants around the amphitheater. The grass responded immediately, growing longer and stronger, while nearby flowers began to bloom with unnatural intensity. Not threatening yet, but establishing the connection I'd need. Vivian noticed the change, and her eyes narrowed. She feinted left, then came in low from the right, trying to bowl me over with sheer momentum. I leaped straight up, using her own force against her as she passed underneath me and landed lightly on her back. For a moment, I had the perfect position for a killing bite. The crowd gasped, expecting me to end it there. Instead, I jumped clear and backed away, showing mercy that I hoped would be interpreted as strength rather than weakness. "Impressive," Vivian said, shifting briefly back to human form to speak. "But mercy is a luxury you can't afford here." She shifted back and came at me again, this time with calculated precision rather than raw aggression. We traded blows and bites, testing each other's speed and reflexes, neither able to gain a decisive advantage. But as the fight wore on, I began to notice something troubling. Vivian wasn't just trying to defeat me, she was trying to exhaust me, to force me into making desperate moves that would justify escalating the violence. She wanted to kill me, not just win the challenge, but eliminate the threat I represented to her power permanently. The realization hit just as she managed to get her teeth into my shoulder, her grip strong enough to crush bone. Pain exploded through me, and I heard Dex's involuntary growl of rage from the crowd. Time to stop playing nice. I reached deep into the lunar-blessed power and let it flow through me like liquid starlight. Silver light erupted from my form, bright enough to make Vivian release her grip and stumble backward, blinking spots from her eyes. But the light wasn't just for show. I was calling on something deeper, older, the primal magic that connected all living things, the power that had made the lunar blessed so feared and revered. The grass beneath our feet began to glow, and I felt every plant, every tree, every living thing in the surrounding forest turn its attention to our fight. They were waiting, ready to respond to my call. "You want to see what a real Luna can do?" I said, shifting back to human form myself. "Let me show you." Power poured from me in waves, and the amphitheater itself began to change. Vines erupted from cracks in the stone, flowers bloomed in impossible colors, and the very air began to shimmer with magical energy. Vivian shifted back as well, her eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "You're cheating. This is supposed to be wolf against wolf. This is supposed to be a test of worthiness to lead," I corrected, letting more power flow into my voice. "And a Luna who can't protect her pack with every tool at her disposal isn't worthy of the position." The vines responded to my gesture, not attacking Vivian but creating a cage around her. Beautiful, gentle, and absolutely inescapable. She threw herself against the barrier, trying to break through with brute force, but the plants simply absorbed her impacts and grew stronger. "You can yield," I said quietly, "or you can exhaust yourself fighting a battle you can't win. But I won't let you hurt anyone else in pursuit of power that was never yours to claim." "Never mine." Vivian laughed bitterly, still clawing at the vines. "I've bled for this pack. I've sacrificed everything to hold it together while Alexander played exile. I've earned the right to lead." "You've earned respect," I agreed. "You've earned gratitude. You've earned a place of honor in this pack's history. But leadership isn't something you take by force or claim by right. It's something given freely by those who trust you to protect them." I gestured to the crowd surrounding us. "Look around you, Vivian. Look at their faces." She followed my gaze, and I saw the moment understanding hit. The pack members weren't watching with excitement or bloodlust anymore. They were watching with worry, not for me, but for her. They'd seen her willingness to escalate violence, her determination to fight a battle she couldn't win rather than accept defeat gracefully. "They don't want you to die for this," I continued. "They want you alive, healthy, and serving as the valuable pack member you've always been. But they also want leaders who know when to fight and when to find another way." The vines around her began to glow with soft silver light, and I channeled healing energy through them. Not to imprison, but to soothe. The exhaustion and pain from our fight began to fade from her body, replaced by the warm comfort of lunar magic. "This is what I offer," I said, loud enough for the entire amphitheater to hear. "Not dominance through violence, but strength through unity. Not power over others, but power shared with others. Not a pack ruled by fear, but a family bound by love." The healing energy spread outward, touching every person in the crowd. I felt their aches and pains, their old injuries and emotional wounds, and offered gentle comfort to all of them. This was what the Lunar Blessed had always been meant to do, not to rule through magical might, but to heal what was broken and strengthen what remained. Vivian stopped fighting the vines and stared at me through the green barrier. "Why?" she whispered. "Why heal me when I was trying to hurt you?" "Because that's what family does," I said simply. "We forgive. We protect. We help each other become better than we were." Slowly, carefully, I dissolved the vine cage. Vivian stood free in the center of the amphitheater, her body healed but her spirit clearly wrestling with concepts she hadn't expected to encounter. "Do you yield?" I asked formally. She looked around the amphitheater one more time, at the pack members watching with hope and affection, at Elizabeth nodding approval, at Dex whose expression held both pride and relief. "I yield," she said quietly. Then louder, "I yield to Luna Ashwood, rightful Luna of the Nightwind Pack." The crowd erupted in cheers that echoed off the stone walls and sent birds flying from the surrounding trees. But the sound that mattered most was Dex's howl of triumph and joy, answered immediately by my own voice lifting to harmonize with his. As the celebration swirled around us, Vivian approached me with hesitant steps. "Luna," she said formally, "I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you my loyalty. What you showed today, that's the kind of leadership this pack has needed. What this pack needs, I replied, is all of us working together. Your experience, Dex's strength, my healing abilities, we're stronger as a team than any of us could be alone. Are you offering me a position in your administration? I'm offering you a place in our family, I corrected. Because that's what we are now, all of us. One family, committed to protecting each other and the values we share. Elizabeth stepped into the circle, her face glowing with pride and satisfaction. The challenge has been completed, she announced. Luna Ashwood has proven herself worthy to lead beside Alexander Nightwind. Let all who witness this day remember what true strength looks like. As the pack members began to disperse, chattering excitedly about what they'd seen, Dex finally made it through the crowd to reach me. He swept me up in his arms, spinning me around in a circle, while silver light danced around us both. You magnificent, impossible woman, he murmured against my ear. Do you have any idea what you just did? Want to fight? I suggested, though we both knew it was more than that. You changed everything. The way this pack thinks about leadership, about power, about what it means to be strong. He set me down, but kept his arms around me. You didn't just defeat Vivian, you transformed her into an ally. That's what the lunar-blessed power is really for, I said, finally understanding something that had been eluding me for weeks. Not to dominate or control, but to heal divisions and bring people together. My grandmother tried to tell me that, but I was too focused on the flashy magic to listen. And now, I looked around at the amphitheater, at the pack members who were no longer strangers but family, at the man who'd shown me that love could be partnership instead of possession. Now I know who I am, I said. I'm Luna Ashwood, lunar-blessed healer, alpha female of the Nightwind pack, and guardian of the Cedar Falls Sanctuary. I'm a woman who's learned that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. And I smiled, letting silver light dance around my fingertips one more time. And I'm just getting started. As we walked back toward the main house together, surrounded by our pack and bathed in the morning sunlight, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete and utter certainty about where I belonged. This was home. This was family. This was the life I'd been meant to live all along. And if anyone tried to threaten it, they'd discover exactly why the lunar-blessed bloodline had once been considered the most powerful force in the supernatural world. But for now, there was peace. There was love. There was a future stretching out before us, bright with possibility and warm with promise. It was everything I'd never dared to dream of. And it was just the beginning. Chapter 11. 3 months into my reign as Luna of the Nightwind pack, I learned that some enemies don't announce themselves with howls and gunfire. Sometimes they come bearing gifts and wearing smiles that never reach their eyes. The Council of Alphas has called an emergency session, Elizabeth announced, setting down a formal invitation written on parchment that practically reeked of old magic and older politics. They want to meet the new Nightwind Luna. I looked up from the territory maps I'd been studying, noting the tension in her voice. That sounds ominous. Because it is. Dex entered the study with Commander Stone close behind, both men wearing expressions that suggested bad news. The invitation came with interesting stipulations, such as, "You're required to demonstrate your abilities before the full council," Stone said grimly. "Public exhibition of lunar-blessed powers, followed by formal questioning about your bloodline qualifications." They want to test me. I set down my pen, feeling the familiar stirring of power in response to threat. To see if I'm really as dangerous as the rumors suggest. "It's worse than that," Dex said, moving to stand behind my chair. His hands settled on my shoulders, warm and reassuring. "Luna, they're not just testing your abilities. They're looking for weaknesses they can exploit." Elizabeth nodded gravely. "The supernatural political landscape has been unstable since word of your emergence spread. Several alpha families have been making moves to consolidate power, forming alliances that haven't existed in centuries." "Let me guess," I said dryly. "They're not forming these alliances to throw us a welcome party." "The Shadow Moon Collective has been recruiting," Stone reported. Not just mercenaries this time, but legitimate pack leaders who feel threatened by the idea of a lunar blessed returning to prominence. They're calling it the Traditional Values Coalition. Traditional values, I repeated. Meaning the good old days when magical bloodlines were extinct and they didn't have to worry about anyone challenging their authority. Essentially, yes. Elizabeth's expression was troubled. The council meeting isn't just a formality, Luna. It's a trap. They want to get you away from your power base, surround you with hostile alphas, and force you into a position where you either submit to their authority or reveal just how dangerous you really are. I stood and moved to the window, looking out over the thriving Nightwind territory. In the 3 months since I'd claimed my position, the changes had been remarkable. Pack members who'd been suspicious and divided were now working together with unprecedented cooperation. Birth rates were up, territorial disputes had virtually disappeared, and the alliance with Cedar Falls had brought a steady stream of new members seeking sanctuary and purpose. We were becoming exactly what I'd promised, a family bound by love rather than fear, which, apparently, was threatening enough to unite our enemies. If I refused to attend? I asked. The council can declare the Nightwind Pack in violation of supernatural law, Dex said quietly. They'd have justification for sanctions, territorial seizure, even military action. And if I attend? Then you walk into a room full of alphas who want to either control you or destroy you, with limited backup and no way to retreat if things go badly. I turned back to face them, seeing my own determination reflected in their worried expressions. So really, it's not much of a choice at all. Luna, Elizabeth began, there might be another way.
No.
I held up a hand to stop her. We all knew this was coming eventually. The supernatural world isn't going to just politely ignore the return of a bloodline they spent 2 centuries trying to eliminate. If they want a demonstration of what I'm capable of, then that's exactly what they'll get. You're talking about going to war, Stone said bluntly. I'm talking about defending my family. Power flickered around my hands as I spoke, responding to the intensity of my emotions. These people, our pack, the refugees we've protected, the alliances we've built, they're not political assets to be traded or abandoned. They're my responsibility. Our responsibility, Dex corrected, moving to stand beside me. Whatever you decide, we face it together. Before I could respond, urgent howling erupted from the compound's perimeter, the signal for immediate threat approaching. All 4 of us were moving before the sound faded, alpha instincts overriding political concerns. We reached the main gate just as a convoy of black vehicles pulled up, their occupants emerging with a fluid grace of professional killers. But it was the figure stepping out of the lead car that made my blood run cold. Marcus Blackthorne, looking every inch the powerful alpha he'd always been, flanked by a woman I didn't recognize and followed by at least a dozen armed guards. Luna, he called across the courtyard, his voice carrying easily in the mountain air. We need to talk. I thought we covered everything during your last visit, I replied, not moving from the gate. You rejected me, I moved on, and a story. Let's skip the pleasantries, interrupted Tobias Grimm, the Shadow Moon collective leader who'd somehow managed to secure an invitation. We're here because you claim to have a solution to the current crisis. So let's hear it. Very well. I stepped away from the table, moving to where a large map of North America dominated one wall. The crisis we're facing isn't new. It's been building for decades, ever since we started treating supernatural society like a zero-sum game where one group's gain automatically means another's loss. I gestured to the map, where colored pins marked various territorial holdings and spheres of influence. Look at this. Werewolf packs controlling narrow strips of wilderness, while vampire covens dominate urban centers. Witch families hoarding magical knowledge, while fae courts manipulate from the shadows. Everyone protecting their own interests while the bigger picture falls apart. The bigger picture being? Asked a vampire lord whose pale beauty made my skin crawl. Human awareness. The words fell into sudden silence. How many unexplained disappearances can we have before someone starts asking the right questions? How many animal attacks in suburban neighborhoods? How many technological glitches that happen to coincide with major magical workings. I pulled out a tablet and activated the wall display, showing news articles and social media posts from the past year. Conspiracy theorists are getting closer to the truth every day. Government agencies are starting to notice patterns. And if supernatural society collapses into open warfare, we won't be able to maintain the masquerade that's protected us all for centuries. So, what do you propose? Serafina asked, her ethereal voice cutting through the murmurs of concern. Integration, I said simply. Not of our societies with the human world, that would be catastrophic. But integration between supernatural factions. Formal alliances, shared territories, coordinated responses to threats. Impossible, scoffed one of the Council Alphas. Our natures are too different. Vampires feed on humans, werewolves are territorial, Fae live by rules that make no sense to anyone else. And witches practice magic that can level city blocks, I interrupted. Yes, we're different. But we're all facing the same extinction-level threat. We can either hang together or hang separately. Pretty words, Tobias said. But what does this look like in practice? Who makes the decisions? Who enforces the rules? Who gets to decide which faction's interests take priority when conflicts arise? I smiled, feeling the power of my bloodline stir in response to the challenge. That's where the lunar blessed come in. The room went very quiet. For centuries, my bloodline served as mediators between supernatural factions. I continued. Not rulers, not conquerors, but neutral parties who could see the bigger picture and help others find common ground. That's what I'm offering now, a return to the old ways, but adapted for modern challenges. You're suggesting we accept werewolf leadership over all supernatural society. The vampire lord's eyes had gone completely black. I'm suggesting you accept neutral arbitration from someone whose power literally depends on harmony between different groups, I corrected. The lunar blessed abilities only work when there's genuine cooperation to build on. I can't force unity. I can only help it flourish where it already exists. I raised my hand, letting silver light dance across my palm. But I can offer something else. Something none of you can provide alone. The light expanded, filling the hall with gentle radiance that somehow touched every person present. And in that light, they could feel what I was offering, not dominance, but healing. Not control, but connection. I can mend the old wounds, I said, my voice carrying the authority of my bloodline. The betrayals, the territorial disputes, the grudges that have been festering for generations. I can help you remember what it felt like before fear and suspicion poisoned every interaction. The healing energy spread through the room, and I watched as centuries-old enemies looked at each other with something approaching understanding. Not friendship, that would take time, but recognition of shared interests, common goals, mutual needs. This is temporary, warned a witch whose aura crackled with defensive spells. Whatever you're doing, it won't last once you stop. You're right, I agreed. Healing isn't a permanent fix. It's an opportunity, a chance to choose something better while you have the clarity to see what better looks like. I let the light fade gradually, leaving the assembled power players to deal with their newly awakened awareness of possibility. So here's what I propose, I continued. The Supernatural Accords, a formal treaty system that establishes territories, protocols, and dispute resolution mechanisms for all our peoples. Think of it as supernatural international law, with the Lunar Bless serving as neutral mediators when conflicts arise. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Serafina asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. What I've always wanted. A family that's safe, a home that's protected, and the knowledge that I'm using my abilities to build something instead of tearing it down. The Fae courts require more concrete assurances, she said. Ancient debts. Will be honored, I interrupted. But on my terms, not yours. The Lunar Blessed bloodline will serve as mediators, as our ancestors intended. But we'll serve all supernatural society, not just Fae interests. And if we refuse to accept these accords? Tobias asked. I let just a hint of power leak into my voice, enough to remind everyone present exactly what they'd be refusing. Then you go back to your territories and wait for human governments to start asking questions you can't answer. You go back to your endless territorial disputes and power struggles while your common enemies grow stronger. You go back to treating symptoms instead of causes until there's nothing left to treat. But if you accept, Dex added, standing to join me, you get something unprecedented in supernatural history. You get genuine security, shared resources, and allies you can actually trust. Because, Elizabeth concluded, the alternative is extinction for all of us. The debate that followed lasted hours. Points were argued, concessions negotiated, territorial boundaries redrawn on maps that would reshape the supernatural world. Some factions walked away, unwilling to compromise their independence. Others demanded modifications that took us dangerously close to the kind of complex political maneuvering that had caused these problems in the first place. But gradually, slowly, a framework began to emerge. Not perfect, not comprehensive, but functional enough to be a starting point. The Supernatural Accords would establish 5 major territorial regions, each with mixed populations and shared governance. Dispute resolution would go through a council of mediators led by lunar-blessed arbitrators. Resource sharing would be formalized through trade agreements that benefited all parties. And most importantly, there would be coordinated responses to threats that affected everyone. "This is madness," muttered one of the vampire lords as the final documents took shape. "This is evolution," I corrected. "And it's our only chance at survival." As dawn approached, the last signatures were added to the accords. Not every faction had signed. Some had stormed out in anger. Others had withdrawn to consider their options. But enough major powers had committed to make the system viable. "So," Dex said as the hall finally emptied, leaving us alone with stacks of documents and the weight of what we'd just accomplished, "how does it feel to have just reorganized supernatural society?" "Terrifying," I admitted.
Exhilarating.
Like we might have just saved the world, or doomed it to a different kind of destruction. "Any regrets?" I looked around the hall where so much history had just been made, then at the man who'd stood beside me through every impossible moment of this journey. "Just one," I said, moving into his arms. "I regret that it took getting rejected by an idiot to find out who I really was." "Marcus did us a favor," Dex said, his voice warm with affection and something deeper. "Though I doubt he sees it that way." "Probably not. But his loss is your gain." "Our gain," he corrected, pulling me closer. "This is just the beginning, Luna. We've laid the foundation, but building something that lasts is going to take everything we have." "Good thing I like a challenge," I said, letting Silverlight dance between us. "Besides, I have you, I have our pack, and I have power that's literally designed to bring people together. How hard could it be?" His laughter echoed through the empty hall, rich with love and promise and the joy of 2 souls who'd found their perfect match. Outside, the sun was rising over a changed world. The Supernatural Accords would face challenges, setbacks, probably outright failures. There would be those who tried to exploit the new system, others who worked to undermine it, and some who simply refused to believe that cooperation was possible. But for the first time in centuries, there was hope. Real, tangible hope that the different peoples of the supernatural world could build something together instead of tearing each other apart. And at the center of it all was a woman who'd started this journey as a rejected, broken Omega and discovered she was something far more powerful, a healer, a leader, a force for unity in a fractured world. I was Luna Ashwood, last of the lunar-blessed, alpha female of the Nightwind Pack, and architect of a new age. And I was just getting started. 1 year later, the mating ceremony took place under the full moon, as tradition demanded, but everything else about our wedding was uniquely ours. Representatives from across the supernatural world filled the amphitheater, where I'd once fought for the right to lead. Werewolf packs sat beside vampire covens, Fey nobles chatted with witch families, and beings whose names I was still learning shared stories and laughter under the starlight. The Supernatural Accords had held for a full year, weathering 3 major crises and countless minor disputes. Not perfectly, there had been setbacks, arguments, and moments when everything seemed on the verge of collapse. But each challenge had ultimately made the alliance stronger, more flexible, more capable of adapting to an ever-changing world. And tonight, all of that political success felt secondary to the simple joy of marrying the man I loved. "You look beautiful," Dex murmured as we stood together at the altar, his amber eyes warm with affection and desire. Though I have to say, the glowing aura is a bit distracting. I looked down at myself, surprised to see that silver light was indeed radiating from my skin in gentle waves. "Sorry, I can't seem to control it when I'm emotional." "Don't apologize. You look like something from a fairy tale." "A fairy tale where the princess saves herself and then helps everyone else do the same?" "The best kind," he said, leaning down to brush his lips against mine in a preview of the kiss that would seal our bond. The ceremony itself was a blend of werewolf tradition and lunar-blessed ritual, with elements borrowed from various supernatural cultures as a symbol of the unity we'd worked so hard to build. Elizabeth officiated, her voice carrying clearly as she spoke the ancient words that would bind our souls together. But it was the personal vows we'd written that mattered most. "Luna," Dex said, his voice rough with emotion, "a year ago you walked into my life broken and lost, and somehow managed to heal not just yourself, but everyone around you. You've shown me that strength isn't about domination, that power is meant to be shared, and that love is the most transformative force in any universe." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner, to support your dreams even when they terrify me, and to love you with everything I have for as long as we both shall live." My own words came from the heart, shaped by everything we'd been through together. "Dex, you saw me at my lowest point and chose to believe I could be something more. You gave me a family when I had nothing, a home when I was lost, and the courage to become who I was meant to be." Silver light pulsed around us as I continued. "I promise to be your partner in all things, to trust you with my heart and my fears, and to build with you a love that's strong enough to weather any storm." When Elizabeth pronounced us officially mated, the bond that snapped into place between us was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not the desperate, needy connection I'd shared with Marcus, but something deeper, steadier, more mature. It felt like coming home and setting off on an adventure at the same time. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn, with music and dancing and enough food to feed a small army. But the moment that would stay with me forever came near the end, when Maya stood up to make a toast. "To Luna and Dex," she said, raising her glass high, "who taught us that family isn't about blood or pack bonds or ancient traditions. It's about choosing to love each other, choosing to fight for each other, and choosing to build something beautiful together." To Luna and Dex, the crowd echoed, and the sound of hundreds of voices raised in celebration echoed across the mountains. Later, much later, we escaped to the cabin we'd had built on the border between Nightwind and Cedar Falls territory, a symbol of the bridge we'd created between our two worlds. "So," Dex said as we stood on the porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink, "what's next for the most powerful supernatural couple in North America?" "Well," I said, settling into his arms with a contentment that felt bone-deep, "the accords need refinement. We've got 3 new refugee packs requesting sanctuary, and someone needs to investigate reports of dragon sightings in Colorado." "Dragons? Really?" "Apparently. Who knew they were still around?" I turned in his embrace, marveling at how perfectly we fit together. "But honestly, right now I just want to enjoy being married to you." "I can arrange that," he said, scooping me up in his arms and carrying me toward the bedroom. "Dex," I laughed, wrapping my arms around his neck, "I'm perfectly capable of walking." "I know. But humor me. It's not every day a man gets to marry his soulmate." As he carried me across the threshold, silver light danced around us both, not the wild, uncontrolled power of my early days, but something warm and steady and purposeful. This was what the lunar-blessed magic was really meant for, not grand gestures or political maneuvering, but the simple act of loving someone so completely that it made the whole world brighter. Outside our window, the forest stretched endlessly toward the horizon, full of mystery and possibility and new adventures waiting to be discovered. There would be challenges ahead, there always were. But we'd face them together, as partners, as mates, as two souls who'd found their perfect match in each other. I was Luna Ashwood Nightwind now, and I had everything I'd never dared to dream of, a love that strengthened me instead of diminishing me, a family that chose me every day, and a purpose that used every part of who I was. The broken Omega who'd fled her pack in shame was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to claim it. And as my mate's lips found mine in the golden light of our first morning as husband and wife, I knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where I was meant to be. This was home. This was love. This was happily ever after. And it was just the beginning. The end. Thank you for joining Luna and Dex on their journey from heartbreak to healing, from rejection to redemption, from broken dreams to beautiful reality. May you find your own moonbound heart, your own perfect match, and your own happily ever after. Until our paths cross again under starlight, remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and worthy of a love that sees all of you and chooses to stay. Sweet dreams, beautiful souls. Crescent moon sparkles.